Our show today is all about ghosts, and while there have been many sightings of ghosts all over the world, today we're discussing California ghosts. So join me on Let's Talk Paranormal next. Do you believe in ghosts, and have you ever seen one? Well, this spine-chilling book has 26 true first-hand accounts of ghosts, hauntings, and spirits across the state of California, and is a must-read. And the author, Preston Dennett, is my guest today. And Preston is the author of 9 books and primarily writes about the UFO subject. Welcome to the show, Preston.
Thank you, Tracy.
It's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you. Now, I know that you have had your own personal ghost sightings. But before we get into that, I want to find out why you decided to write this book about California ghosts.
Well, it's because I kept hearing so many different stories. I mean, I had no idea that so many people I knew were seeing ghosts. Most people don't talk about it for obvious reasons.
They don't want the ridicule of saying they've seen a ghost.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people that I've talked to haven't even told their family members. So I kept getting all these amazing stories, and they were just so dramatic that, I mean, I really felt like these stories had to be told.
Right.
And really, I wrote it sort of to convince myself that this was actually a real phenomena. Because I had a hard time believing in ghosts at first.
You did?
Yeah, even when I saw one, I wasn't really sure, you know, was I hallucinating or you know what I mean?
Right. And of course, you've got to ask those usual logical questions. You know, just like when you see a UFO, you've got to observe and make sure you're, you know, seeing what you're seeing.
Right. I mean, definitely. I agree.
Okay. Well, how does a haunting start?
Well, ghosts, I think, are people. They're just people. So basically it starts with when someone dies, and usually it's a tragic death, like a murder or suicide will often cause a haunting. But you know, there's so many different ways hauntings start. A lot of the people I've talked to, their haunting began when they used a Ouija board.
Oh.
I mean, I've got several cases of that. So if you don't know what you're doing with the Ouija board, you know,
that's quite a no-no, really, isn't it?
And it really does open up the avenue to a haunting. But another case I investigated involved a house that was built over a burial ground. So that's another cause of it.
So do you think that spirits, ghosts actually come through because they have unfinished business of some kind?
Absolutely. I think most ghosts have a purpose. You know, they're trying to get noticed. Either they're too attached to the physical world for some reason. Maybe it's because they love somebody, or they love their house, or they were materialistic.
And they don't want to let it go.
Right, drug addictions or alcoholism, that can cause a ghost.
Really?
Absolutely. People who are too attached to the world and are not willing to leave it for whatever reason can become a ghost. But mostly, I think it's skepticism of life after death. People die and they don't realize that they're dead.
Right.
So when they die and they're still living, they assume that they're still alive.
And I hear this from other people, that usually they have a hard time knowing that they're dead because they may have had a really nasty accident and suddenly life is cut short and they don't know where they are.
It's amazing to me that you could not know that you're dead, but apparently that's the case with at least half the ghosts.
Wow. What kind of people see ghosts?
You know, anyone can see a ghost. Basically, if you go to a haunted house or a haunted hotel, your chances of seeing a ghost are really a lot better. But in my files, I found that twice as many women as men see ghosts, which I thought was really surprising.
Really?
And I've got a lot of cases where children only see the ghosts. In one case, there was a haunted apartment in North Hollywood, And the person who lived there was experiencing scattered activity, but not a lot. But one evening, everyone was in the house, and only the child could see this ghost that was standing in the hallway. She was screaming, the man, there's a man. But no one could see this ghost except the child.
Do you think children are more open to this kind of thing?
I absolutely do. And a lot of the people I've interviewed had their experiences as children.
Really?
So there's something about, children, I don't know what it is, maybe they're innocent or unprejudiced in some way, but they're more open to this.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about your own sighting.
It was actually about 2 weeks after my mother died. It was her ghost, right? And we went to a service. And I didn't believe in ghosts, mind you.
Right,
I was
you were
very
skeptical.
Very skeptical. And as my father drove up in the car, I saw her, my mom, sitting in the front seat.
Really?
And she has, a certain way of sitting, very erect. And I immediately recognized her. And I thought, well, I must have flipped my lid. I'm going crazy. I must be really traumatized by her death. But I saw her so clearly, and the car drove up right up next to me, and she sort of faded away.
Really?
And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell anyone about this. I don't think it's a ghost. But maybe, I didn't really think it through.
And was she wearing anything, any certain color, or?
Just the clothes she normally wears.
Right.
And
she didn't look at you?
No, she didn't. No.
Right. And have you seen her since?
I have had a number of experiences with her, not where I've seen her, but I felt her presence, and I did actually communicate with her at one point, which was really interesting because I kept feeling her around me, and so I asked, I want you to give me a sign. Move these statues that are in my bathroom. They're heavy brass statues. They can't be moved.
Right.
A couple of days later, there was this giant crash in my bathroom. I went running in, and they were all moved. I mean, that's a really good sign.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
It's not ambiguous at all.
And if they're brass, they're not that easy to move.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that ghosts can manipulate the environment.
How do you think they're able to do that?
I'm not exactly sure, but they can absolutely manipulate the environment pretty much any way a living person can. They can open and close doors, they can push people downstairs, they can lift heavy objects.
Do you remember the movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg and Demi Moore? Because one of the actors in there that was apparently a ghost started to move a can, I think it was, in a subway with his stomach. Remember, he was teaching them, you have to do this with your stomach.
It's actually I know how the process, I think I know how it works, is they step down the vibration of their body till it becomes almost physical. And they are able to move the environment, physical objects that way. But usually they will affect electromagnetic instruments like phones and answering machines and lights, and a lot of people will have that sort of activity because ghosts are able to use it very easily.
Right. Do you think then, Preston, in your opinion, do you think ghosts are dangerous?
Are people dangerous? Yeah, I think that ghosts can be dangerous because they're just like people. But for the most part, it's a big deal for a ghost to be able to open a door or turn off a light. They're trying to get noticed, and so they're doing everything they can. And they can be dangerous. I've talked to people who've been, choked or even almost possessed.
Really?
But each person has gotten over this, traumatic experience without any physical harm.
Are we talking about probably a poltergeist issue there rather than a ghost?
Right. Well, that's a big controversy. Poltergeists, some people think, there's different theories to explain them. There's three main theories. One is that it's uncontrolled mediumship.
Right.
Another is that they're actually evil spirits, like demons. And another is that it's the repressed emotions of an emotionally disturbed person.
Right.
And honestly, I'm not sure which theory is correct, because you can march out cases to sort of support each theory. But I tend to think that poltergeists are just angry ghosts,
So whereas ghosts perhaps come back because they have unfinished business, poltergeists just are tricksters.
Yeah, they're negative entities, no doubt about it, and they're not interested in going on to the next, towards the light, so to speak.
Yeah, they're perhaps bearing a grudge that they died.
Yeah, perhaps.
Whatever scenario, whatever.
Absolutely. I think that some of them are human people who've just kind of forgotten their identity and taken on sort of a negative aspect and are very destructive.
And animals are very sensitive too to this kind of thing, I hear. Right,
yeah, I've got several cases where people actually, that's how they first started noticing that strange things were going on, is because their animals would act very strangely and watch, cats especially, can see ghosts very clearly.
Right.
as they walk across the room.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
It is interesting. Well, let's take a look at your book, California Ghosts. And we're going to have a look at some of the chapters that are coming up, and specific chapters, and what that is all about. Okay. So let's take a look at the first one, Preston, that we have on here. So which chapter is this one, Preston?
This is called The White Witch. It's actually a very famous ghost, a haunting, which is taking place up in El Sobrante in Alvarado Park. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting because a lot of people have seen this ghost, which is basically a tall white lady. She lived about 150 years ago and supposedly dabbled in black magic.
Oh,
and
really?
It's an interesting story because she had a young daughter who was of dating age. And one evening this daughter brought home a blonde sailor. And in the middle of the night, a fire started and the house burnt down, and both the lady and her daughter were killed, but the blonde sailor escaped. And ever since then, this white witch has been wandering Alvarado Park looking for
her sailor.
The blonde sailor, right. And so apparently this ghost will attack blonde people, blonde boys.
Really?
Right? And so I was able to interview a group of people. They were in a heavy metal band. They were teenagers, young 20s, and one of them was blonde, and so they decided to use him as bait to sort of capture this ghost. They had heard about it. A lot of people have seen it, running on horseback. They've watched the ghost actually chase them 30 miles per hour.
Good
So
Lord.
this is a big, ghost. Mm-hmm. At any rate, they went out there late at night and sat there waiting for the ghost, where it usually appeared. And sure enough, it showed up. They couldn't believe it. They described it as being very tall, floating about a foot off the ground.
Wow.
Letting off a big, obvious bright light, actually, glowing. And it chased them right out of the park. And they were so amazed by it and so, frightened, they decided to go back and do it again. And peer pressure, being what it is, they went right back to the same place and it appeared again. And they got a better look at it this time.
Did they get pictures? Photographs?
No, they didn't. They didn't. Unfortunately, they didn't. But I bet someone could if they were to stake that place out.
Mm-hmm. Is it easy to photograph ghosts?
A lot of people have. I haven't been able to capture many photographs. There's one photograph, I think, that captured some activity. Mm-hmm. But I've seen a number of really good photographs and video footage. Mm-hmm. It's very, very convincing. Mm-hmm. I really think there's enough proof to convince a jury that ghosts are real.
They are real and they do exist.
Yeah, it's great evidence of life after death. I think some of the best evidence we have.
Mm-hmm. And you've investigated all of these 26 accounts yourself.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Went to the houses when I could, and I felt the ghosts. I've had my hair tugged. I've been poked a couple of times.
And how did you feel?
Oh, it's thrilling. Some people think it's scary, but I just find it fascinating.
Well, you know what? I had my own personal ghost sighting as well many years ago in the 80s.
Wow.
And it was in London, and it's too detailed to go into now on the show, but my ghost was a female and she was headless.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my heart was just pounding away. I was terrified because it was my very first and only sighting of a ghost so far.
Yeah,
but,
headless ghost, I've got a few of those cases in
and
my files.
The thing was, she was sitting in front of a wall of mirror and you could not see any reflection.
That's spooky.
And I had witnesses with me and they saw the same thing, so I wasn't hallucinating.
Yeah, most people I've talked to have witnesses with them at the time, so think that there's really a lot of good evidence for this. It's all true.
It certainly is true, and I'm sure our audience watching today have got their own ghost stories that they'd like to share with us, so you can email in your story to us and we'll feature it on our website for you. So let's take a look at the next chapter on this one, Preston. What do we have here?
Those are ghostly monks. I talked to this lady. She went to England. Well, England.
Oh, she did. England is so haunted.
It is so haunted.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, if you want to see ghosts, there's so many places there to go. And that's her uncle took her to these different haunted places, including this monastery here. And turns out she's a medium, because when she went home, she started seeing ghosts constantly. She was haunted in her bedroom in North Hollywood by this old man of a ghost. And she would go to her friend's house and she says, this place is haunted. This bedroom here, I feel a dark energy. Well, someone had been murdered there.
I
And she started just picking up on all this activity after, you know, this trip to England sort of sparked it.
Wow.
She had a ghost at her work. She worked at a business office. She kept seeing this sort of yellow skirts type of, just walk by, just a kind of a yellow skirt. And one time she finally got a good look at it. She saw black braids, and it was a fringed leather skirt. It was an Indian girl carrying a pail of water.
Really?
So the whole San Fernando Valley actually used to be populated by Indians. And so there's a lot of ghosts stories, you know, the Native Americans.
There's lots of stories about those, yeah.
Yeah.
How can we be less fearful of ghosts, you think? What can we do?
Well, first of all, you got to remember that ghosts are just people. They're just like us. And most of them are people who really need, you know, some help. They could use a listening ear. They're trying to get noticed. They're confused. So ghosts are emotionally disturbed people, basically. You shouldn't fear them.
So try and communicate with them,
Right,
you're
absolutely.
suggesting.
If your house is haunted, that's the best thing you can do, is talk to them like they're a normal person.
Would you say try EVP, electronic voice phenomena?
That is like a Ouija board. You know, you can open up sort of an avenue. You got to be careful. It's like a controlled haunting at first, but it can get out of control very quickly. And like I said, that's how a lot of hauntings start. And those are generally the negative type hauntings. Because what happens is the lowest level above the physical plane is where all the bad people go, the murderers, the rapists, the drug addicts. It's very easy to contact them through a Ouija board before you say contact your grandma or something like that.
Right, and I'm sure that's a very crowded place.
Right, absolutely. You know, I've done the Ouija board and I did table lifting and all that. So I know it's a valid phenomena.
Right.
And it can be done safely.
Right. Well, whilst we're talking about EVP, we had an email question that one of our viewers sent in to you and wanted to ask you something. Yes, and this is from a Paul in Studio City, and he says, has Preston ever tried experimenting with EVP?
No, I haven't, though I should. I bought a tape recorder, and I would like to try that, definitely.
Because it's easy to do, isn't it?
Right, you just,
Handheld
from what I understand, you
recorder.
just let it play. And then
Ask a
listen
question,
to it.
rewind it, listen to see what you have.
Yeah, I think it's actually a great avenue for ghost research and shows a lot of potential for real proof.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's take a look at the next chapter in your book and tell us a little bit about this one.
This is an amazing story. This is one of the people who I work with at my accounting office.
Really?
Her name is Connie Lopez, and this happened just recently. She lives alone in her condominium, and she woke up one morning, went to the bathroom, and there was a big greasy handprint on the shower stall. She keeps her house very clean. She knows absolutely it could not have been there. It wasn't even her hand. It was much larger. And so she freaked out. She checked all the doors and windows, asked the management if there's been any intruders, but there was none. So she cleaned it up and was very nervous about it and didn't know how to explain it. And then a couple of days later, it happened again. She went into the bathroom and she saw more greasy handprints, and actually on her hand was another handprint.
Really?
And she's like, wow, how did that happen? She went running into her bedroom. There was oil all around her bed and also down in the dining room. And she freaked out. The doors were all locked, you know, the windows. There was no way this could have happened. And she was cleaning it up, and then she realized what it was. It turns out her ex-husband, Mario, was a truck mechanic. He had just died.
Right.
And he used to track oil into the house all the time. And she was constantly cleaning it up after him.
Right.
And here she was cleaning up oil when she suddenly realized, you know, I've done this before. I know who left this oil. And it turns out that this man, Mario, it's a pseudonym, he appeared to a bunch of other people in the family, to his nieces and nephews. He appeared as a full-color apparition. And he just was able to get his message across of life after death to a number of different people in a really tangible way. I mean, he put oil. Those oil stains are still there.
Really?
So, I mean, that's good proof.
Yes, it is. It is. She never felt the hand touch her hand, though, right?
No, she didn't.
And she had no burning sensation or anything like that?
No, and I've talked to people who've definitely felt ghosts, you know, in a very physical way, so.
It's true that we shouldn't really get confused with ghosts being angels or spirit guides, though, right? They are separate entities.
Right. Well, a ghost is basically someone who's died who doesn't really know it. A spirit is someone who is evolved and gone on to the next plane and will come and visit you, often in dreams too. And
they seem
angels,
to do that in dreams quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah, dreams are a really good avenue.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we're in a dissociated state. We're actually in our astral bodies a lot of the time when we're dreaming. And that's where that's what ghosts are.
That's our, what is that, our alpha state, beta state? What is it? The
Alpha,
deepest
beta,
state?
delta is probably
state.
the deepest, where you can get a lot of really good communication. But absolutely, people will often dream about their loved ones after they die. And those are real communications. And you can tell when you actually have the dream, because it feels like you're meeting the person.
Right.
For real.
Right. Yes, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Let's take a look at the next chapter here that we have. Something about table lifting there.
Yes, this was actually a lady in Woodland Hills who was able to do table lifting. It's like a Ouija board, but it's more dramatic, right? What you do is you get a bunch of people to sit around a table and lightly put your fingers on it, and you sort of ask yes and no questions of the spirits, and the table will rise. And when I first saw it, I thought, you know, these people are tipping the table
doing something
with their fingers.
Yeah.
But once I sat down and did it, I knew instantly that this was real. And at one point I asked everyone to take their hands off, and just me and the medium did it. She put one finger on the table and it would rise up.
Really?
And then I got to actually do it without her, where it shook under my hands, just me. So I know that I wasn't doing it, right?
Right, right.
And oh, it was amazing, because different spirits would come through and the table would rock differently for each one.
Should we really be doing this kind of thing, though, just to, you know, find